I have two questions on Russia and China, North Korea. First question, the foreign minister of China and Russia met yesterday, and these two countries have announced that there is no upper limit on cooperation with each other. Do you see any indications for China to provide economic and other military aid to Russia? If you answer this, I'm going to follow up.
Great.
Second question.
So on your first question, we've heard this expression before. I believe the terminology that was used in the 5,000-word joint communique between these two countries several weeks ago now was a friendship without limits. Now, that can be a friendship without limits if the PRC is willing to admit that everything it has stood for on the world stage in recent years and decades means absolutely nothing. If the concept of state sovereignty, if the concept that it has, the principles that it has consistently espoused, territorial integrity at the UN and in other fora, if those mean anything to the PRC, then I suspect this will be a friendship that may in fact have limits. What we've said is that we are going to continue to engage our counterparts in the PRC to make very clear to them as part of our bilateral engagement, a bilateral engagement that is predicated and focused on establishing guardrails so that the competition that dominates our relationship doesn't veer into something worse, including conflict. We have, in a number of engagements, including the National Security Advisor's engagement with Yang Jiechi, including with President Biden's engagement with President Xi just after that, made clear that there would be implications, profound implications, for any PRC decision to support Russia's war efforts in Ukraine. We said we're going to be watching very closely. We are watching very closely to see exactly what the PRC may decide to do or may not decide to do in this case.
Thank you. And the second question, the adoption of UN Security Council resolution on North Korea is often rejected due to opposition from China and Russia. This cannot deter North Korea's continued provocations. Don't you think there must be a change in the role of the UN Security Council resolutions?
I am not prepared to speak to any position we have regarding the change and a potential change in the UN Security Council. But what I can say is that in response to the DPRK's provocations in recent days and even longer, we have engaged, yes, at the UN, including in the Security Council, but we have engaged with our allies and partners around the world on a bilateral and multilateral basis. That starts with our treaty allies in the Indo-Pacific, two of whom, Japan and South Korea, we work with incredibly closely on the challenge that is presented by the DPRK's provocations, the challenge, the threat to international peace and security that is posed by its ballistic missile and nuclear weapons programs. Secretary Blinken spoke to his Japanese and South Korean counterparts. Deputy Secretary Sherman has had similar engagements. Sung Kim, our special representative for the DPRK, has had engagements as well. We have done this bilaterally, but as you know, Johnny, we've also focused on our trilateral engagement, and Secretary Blinken at that level last had an opportunity to meet together in a trilateral format with his Japanese and South Korean counterparts just a couple of months ago now in Honolulu, Hawaii. It was an opportunity to send a very strong signal that we stand with our allies in the Indo-Pacific, that there will be consequences, continued consequences and accountability for the DPRK's provocations, whether that is in terms of our own national authorities, sanctions that we can put forward ourselves, whether it is in terms of additional UN Security Council sanctions, but also to make very clear that responsible countries around the world should feel an obligation, should be obligated to stand up to threats to international peace and security. That is especially true of permanent members of the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council is the world's preeminent venue for dealing with threats to international peace and security. So when we're confronted with one, we do expect and we do hope that fellow members of the UN Security Council respond appropriately.
I have a follow-up on North Korea.
Sure.
So, like North Korea keep, raising tensions. They're preparing for a nuclear test or even submarine launch missiles. So North Korea keeps raising tensions, but your responses have not really been changed. Besides condemning North Korea publicly, coordinating with allies, imposing unilateral sanctions, what else can you do? As Johnny mentioned, China and Russia are opposing new measures through the Security Council.
So you're right that we have continued to place additional pressure on those responsible for the proliferation of ballistic missile technology, nuclear advancements in the DPRK. We have announced additional sanctions against those proliferators even in recent days. Sanctions on the part of the United States, on the part of our partners and allies, is one important ingredient. We have also taken necessary measures to ensure the security of our homeland and the security of our treaty allies as well. Recently, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command ordered intensified what we call ISR, that is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance collection activities in the Yellow Sea, as well as enhanced readiness among our ballistic missile defense forces in the region. And just after that, the Department of the Treasury, as I alluded to before, announced new actions to help prevent the DPRK from accessing foreign items and technology that enable it to advance its prohibited weapons programs. So we can do all of these things. We can hold the DPRK accountable. We can take necessary measures when it comes to deterrence and defense. But we can also signal very clearly, as we continue to do, that we are open to dialogue, that we are open to diplomacy, that we harbor no hostile intent towards the DPRK. And in fact, to the contrary, we believe that the responsible thing to do would be to discuss the the DPRK's ballistic missile and nuclear weapons programs in the diplomatic context. Now, of course, the DPRK hasn't responded affirmatively to that just yet. That certainly doesn't mean that we are sitting on the sidelines, twiddling our thumbs, waiting for them to come to us. We are focusing on the relationship that we have with our treaty allies, focusing on the bilateral element of that, focusing on the trilateral element of that when it comes to the relationship with Japan and South Korea, and working on those measures of accountability.
Thank you. I'm from China CCTV. So my question have two parts. We know this week Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi just chaired the third meeting of foreign ministers of Afghanistan neighboring countries. So my first part is that what's your take on this kind of mechanism will promote the solution of Afghanistan issue? And my second part is during this meeting there is an extended meeting on Afghanistan participated by special envoys from China, US, and Russia. So how do you weigh the role of these three countries can play on dealing with this type of regional issues? Thank you.
Well, to your question, Special Representative for Afghanistan, our Special Representative Tom West, did attend the so-called extended Troika meeting in Tanzhou, China on March 31st today. The extended Troika, includes the United States, China, and Russia, with Pakistan in this case as the additional participant. These are countries that have a good degree of leverage with the Taliban. And the extended Troika has in the past been a constructive forum, and it is critical that the international community remain united in its approach to Afghanistan. It is especially critical with countries that have a good deal of leverage with the Taliban. The United States would be included in that, Russia would be included in that, the People's Republic of China would be included in that, and Pakistan would be included in that. It is incumbent on all of these countries to use that leverage to push the Taliban in the right direction. When it comes to this issue, our interests are aligned with the members of the Troika, and that includes when it comes to the imperative of seeing girls return to secondary schools and encouraging inclusive governance. We want to see to it that those are messages the Taliban receive not only from us, not only from our European partners with whom we're coordinating closely on Afghanistan and engagement with the Taliban, but also from a broader collection of countries, and certainly those countries that do have a good deal of leverage.